What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Tape. TJ Wengert here with you for another episode of the pod, brought to you in part by FastDraft, today's presenting sponsor. Be sure to use code 32BW for a deposit match on your next deposit to FastDraft. Also, well, I know this is a little lazy. Last week, we just did a mock draft. I don't know why I didn't think about the trade deadline and the repercussions that was going to have. Maybe I just didn't expect Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner to get moved to the deadline. I don't know. I don't know how many people were anticipating that. But nevertheless, it calls for, an update to my 2026 mock draft. I know it's lazy, but the fact of the matter is, I know you're a sicko and I know you like the mock draft. So we're going to pump another one out. And let's also be honest, a podcast episode, trade deadline winners and losers coming out on, Thursday night. Not going to do as good as updated NFL mock draft post trade deadline on a Thursday night. So, let's be honest, let's peek behind the curtain. But with all that said, we're going to jump through another 32 picks in today's video. We're going to do some different stuff. We've got different teams with multiple picks in the first round now. The orders change with the results of last weekend's action. So there's a decent bit that I have changed and some interesting player team fits I'm bringing to the table today, including the New Orleans Saints at number 1 overall. I'm going to have them take Fernando Mendoza. My last mock, we went with a non-quarterback, so to speak, just in case you missed it. We'll leave it vague just so you have a reason to go back, check it out. It's tough to tell with what this is going to be with Tyler Shuck. Odds are they're playing him now so they get the idea of if they need to draft a guy in 26, are they going to do it in 27? Also, we're at this difficult crossroad where how many of these guys are going to be in the 26 class versus 27. That may be a huge deciding factor for whether the New Orleans is going to trade back, take a quarterback here at 1 or take a pick and take best player available of a non-quarterback. So we did non-QB last time. Let's do quarterback this time. Eventually, especially once we get ideas of like what quarterbacks are in and which ones are out, maybe we'll do a trade down possibility. But Saints fans, love to know what you're thinking here at number 1 overall. I think Fernando Mendoza would check a lot of boxes for Kellen Moore. So I think this would be a really nice scheme fit for him and a guy that could definitely give you hope moving forward as, the signal caller for the Saints. At number 2 here, if I had to, if I was putting out a big board tomorrow and had to peg who's the best player in the class, I'm kind of at the point where I think it's just Arvell Reese. And I weigh position value. And he's an off-ball linebacker who maybe he's also the best edge rusher in the class. And I know Ruben Bain exists and he's been my number 1 guy on my board. But the more you see Reese deployed on the edge, you're like, oh, okay, well, it's time to have another Micah Parsons, another Abdul Carter, another one of these conversations of what Jalen Walker, which position does this guy fit into? Jahad Campbell, another guy in that mix. So, either way you spin it, I think he brings a lot of value to that Titans front 7 that could still use some beefing. And I almost think in this situation, considering Cedric Gray has been a really good player for them, and they have those 2 really good defensive tackles in Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, I almost think in this spot, you probably do play Arvell Reese at edge. And if that's the case, they need a boost at edge. He's bringing the juice for Ohio State. Would love that fit. But honestly, wherever Arvell Reese goes, I want it. Same thing I said about Jalen Walker all last draft cycle. Let him be an agent of chaos, off ball, one edge spot, other side, line up over the center. I want to see this guy deployed in so many different ways. And I want a quarterback and an offense as a whole to account, even if it's just a quarter of a second, every single play pre-snap and then mid-snap. Where is he and what is he doing? That's what I want. No matter what, wherever Arvell Reese goes, whatever off-ball edge, whatever, I just want defenses to use him in a way that's going to force offenses to stop, think, even just a little bit. It could make a difference. All right, we're going to go on to the New York Jets and, kind of hit on it a little bit. I'm thinking maybe for the next mock, we do a mock where we don't have Moore and Simpson in it and just explore what this class looks like. Not even just Moore and Simpson. No Moore, no Simpson, no Sellers, no Levitt, no Mateer, no Mayava, and anybody else that I would probably sneak in there. No Nico, obviously. So I almost just kind of want to explore mock with where it's like Mendoza and then, everyone else with no Moore, no Tyson, or Ty Simpson, no Lenore Sellers, all those guys. So maybe we'll do that. But for right now, I am going to have these guys in these mock drafts. I think Ty Simpson, man, I like Mendoza, but I think there's a higher ceiling with Simpson and Moore, just the way I see it. So one of those 2 guys, if they declare, will probably be my QB1, and the other will be QB2 if they declare, and then it'll probably be Mendoza. But that to me would just be like best case scenario for this quarterback class. Realistically, kind of feel, especially if you listen to like Todd McShay's podcast, he's got some intel saying it sounds like Dante Moore is going back to school, sounds like Ty Simpson's going back to school. So it may just be Mendoza and then everyone else. And in that case, then Mendoza's going to be my QB1. So wanted to just kind of get you an update there. But dude, this would be an awesome add to that Tanner Engstrand offense. And I could just think about what Goff's processing ability and accuracy over the middle of the field did for Ben Johnson, I could only hope Ty Simpson could have the same impact for Tanner Engstrand, and we can only hope that Tanner Engstrand ever develops into the type of play caller that Ben Johnson is. Obviously, lots of hope in the air at this point for the Jets. Not a lot of great stuff on the field. All you have is just your hope to pin your laurels on. But either way, and if the starting experience for Simpson is something that's a concern for you, well, you got Justin Fields under contract, for another year. So you can trot out Fields for a little bit, buy your time with Simpson, and eventually turn the keys over to him mid-season, quarter of the season, at the end of the season. Who knows? A lot of different ways that could break out. But you do have a built-in potential starting option if you don't feel comfortable going right to Ty Simpson after 1 year of starting experience. But the tape, and his tape's awesome, especially when it comes to reading out a defense. Like, he is mature beyond his number of starts, and that's why I'm like, you know what, I would declare if I was Ty Simpson. I would take advantage of a weaker quarterback class, get out in front of the 2027 group, and I'd come out this year. But then we get to the Miami Dolphins. Keep them in town. They just traded Jalen Phillips. They should have traded Bradley Chubb. And I think Ruben Bain and his position versatility, lining him up inside, outside, plus Chop Robinson, that's a really fun 1-2 punch. Plus, you get to keep them local, low moving costs. Shout out to NFLSE. That's definitely, a little fun plus here. But I do think his power rush profile long-term as a complement to Chop Robinson, and Bain's got some bend to him, but like 275-pound edge rusher versus Chop, who had that insane get off. He's got plenty of bend in his own right. I think that's a nice 1-2 punch long-term. And especially with what you could do with him, moving him around the interior, I'd be really curious to see how they could deploy him next to Zach Sealer, next to Kenneth Grant, who hopefully continues to improve, because the rookie year hasn't been great so far. I'm really hoping for better in the years to come. So I'd be really curious how they could utilize all three of those pieces. Who Grant's got the potential. Sealer's a good football player. Big time fan of Bain in this draft class. So I'd be really curious about what they could do with those guys on the inside. But yeah, just the next best player on the board, honestly, it'd be like Arvell Reese, non-quarterback at least, Arvell Reese, then Ruben Bain. So there's a lot of holes to fix on that Dolphins team. So we've been going quarterback in these mocks, one to explore a possibility of like, hey, maybe they do just hold on to Tua, don't need the dead money, and then just, whoever's the head coach, let's just be honest, it's not going to be McDaniel. Whoever's the head coach in 2026, sorry, you got Tua for a year, but hey, trust me, like, we're excited about the 2027 QB class. That could be part of the sale of that job. Hey, we're not gonna want to done you because we know that 27 QB class is where it's at, and we want you leading the charge for that. So we're gonna build around the rest of the roster right now for the Dolphins, and then push off quarterback till 2027. That takes us to the Giants here at 5. I'm gonna go with Jordyn Tyson, but honestly, him, Carnell Tate, like either one of these guys would be a really fun fit. I still have Tyson as my wide receiver 1, but Carnell Tate's like definitely making an argument to where he should be in that mix. And furthermore, like once we get to picks 9 and 10, like where those two, Lemon and Carnell Tate come off the board, it's a fun conversation, and you could easily flip the order of which I have them come off the board. So it's a really fun wide receiver class kind of emerging in front of us. That being said, let's go ahead. But here talking about Tyson for the New York Giants, I mean, I think now we see with no Malik Neighbors in the picture, wow, that wide receiver room got really thin really quick. And I think about how you could deploy Neighbors best, and honestly, it might be from the slot. He could play outside, and he could be your Z and all that sort of stuff, and he can handle press coverage. He's a good enough receiver. He can do it all. And Tyson, I feel very similarly about. But I think by adding a Tyson into the fold, that frees you up that much more to really maximize the value that Neighbors brings to the table and put him in the slot, take advantage of those slot fades that he was a demon running at LSU, put him in motion, use him as a Z, give him a head start. He's an electric athlete. He doesn't need a head start, but God, could you imagine if you gave him one? Same thing that Tyreek Hill and that Miami offense, the easy button, so to speak, they gave that offense by utilizing motion. And I think Tyson could be your X receiver, or you'd use Neighbors in that role and utilize Tyson off the line of scrimmage in the slot. He might be better. He's another one of these guys. I was talking to some people from the draft professors about it. He might be better as a slot receiver. So I think that just diversifies the portfolio of that offense, specifically the passing attack. You got a quarterback going into year 2, former first-round pick, a lot of hype, a lot of excitement. And then also Kane Scadaboo, Jordyn Tyson, reuniting those guys. I mean, that'd be a really fun story in and of itself, and it would just add that much more firepower to that offense long-term. I know the defense has got some work to do, but I also think firing Shane Bowen would go a long way to patching up that side of the ball. Let's get on to the Cleveland Browns here at 6. Again, I'd be curious about doing a mock in a couple weeks from now, a week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, where it's just Fernando Mendoza and then none of these, no Ty Simpson, no Dante Moore, no Lenore Sellers. I don't have Sellers in this mock because I definitely think he's a 2027 guy now. And Moore definitely could be, Todd McShay's talking about he's pretty much confident to call it. He's what did they do it on election night? I guess they just call it. But anyways, McShay's at that point with Dante Moore and going back to Oregon. So if that's the case, totally get it. But if he does declare, I mean, you could send him to Oregon and have him back up the guy he was just backing up a year ago at Oregon and Dylan Gabriel. That would be kind of fun. But just from like an arm talent and pure passing standpoint, to me, he's the best pure passer in this class, very CJ Stroud to me. So I think like long-term, if he is in this class and 2 quarterbacks are off the board, the Browns would be very fortunate. And like they'd be counting the stars that, okay, well, third quarterback fell to us at 6 and it's Dante Moore. That's a pretty awesome third quarterback in a draft class. So big arm, like the accuracy, mobile enough, can create. I know the last few weeks haven't been quite, what the Penn State game was for Dante Moore, but I still believe in the talent. Does sound like he's going back to school, but if he were to declare, this would be a home run situation for the Browns at 6. Raiders and then the Bengals next up. I hate to repeat picks in consecutive mocks, but the Christian Wilkins experiment obviously leaves a Christian Wilkins-sized hole, frankly, in the middle of that defensive line for the Raiders. So Peter Woods, slot him in. Yeah, at least get the run defense component of it. And I think I want to see him take a step forward as a pass rusher. Still got some time this year for where maybe he could put together a game or two where you really see it come together. But I also think playing on a defensive line where Max Crosby exists makes him that much more likely to be a productive pass rusher. He's going to see some one-on-ones. And at that point, that plus coaching, he needs, that should set him up in a spot where he could be a better pass rusher, more productive pass rusher, at least at the next level than he is right now at Clemson. And then Caleb Downs for the Bengals. I mean, did you watch the Bears game last week? I mean, have you seen that defense attempt to play defense? I mean, I know it's just safety. Like he can't fix the corners either. Like there's a lot to be fixed there, but I think his range, I know Ohio State doesn't often play him single high free safety, but he's a good enough athlete, I think, that could do that. And he's just got great football instincts and, ball skills. But also what he would just be as like this team for years now, Lou Anarumo to Al Gold now, they have been atrocious defending tight ends, right? The Colston Loveland breakout game. Like I had a buddy, I told, put some money down on that. Like I can guarantee this is going to be the Colston Loveland breakout game. And lo and behold, that it was, 2 tight ends score for the Steelers against the Bengals. They have just historically been, historically, at least the last 5 to 10 years, they've been dog shit, pardon my language, at defending tight ends. Caleb Downs, boom, insert this guy, and that's going to clean that picture up real quick. But also defending running backs out of the backfield, being that robber and, a cover 3 zone, defending the sticks, middle of the field. He brings a ton there. And this is also a team that's like not a very good run defense, and his tackling prowess and his ability to play at the line of scrimmage, I think, boosts that. So he's bringing multiple. He's raising the tide in multiple aspects for this Cincinnati Bengals defense. So him falling to your lap at 8, that's a home run spot there. As much as they still need, yes, edge rusher if they move on from Hendrickson, they still need corner, linebackers a mess, but I think Downs could be as close to like a can't miss for this defense that has no room for missing at this point. Then we get to the Washington Commanders, and this is where like these next 2 picks, you could convince me either way. I still have Makai Lemon as my receiver too. I love the guy. Yes, I know the Notre Dame game was like 76 receiving yards. God, he's mortal. Oh my God. If that's like your low point, then like, what are we doing here? And then, I can't remember who USC played last week, but it's been a little bit quieter. It hasn't been quite the Illinois game every week, but I still think what he is as a Z and a slot is dynamic. He's never tackled where he makes a catch. Tougher, he's sub 6 foot, but like his physicality plays over the middle of the field, making those contested grabs. He can work the sideline with some good polish. Nuanced route runner, vice grips for hands. I mean, he's just going to be a quarterback's best friend. And I thought about Carnell Tate here because if we're honest, let's say Terry McLaurin's back next year and he's 100%. We're probably at the point where we don't want him to be our X. Like we would like to take some of those physical plays off, his ledger. And maybe that just means Noah Brown. Congratulations, you're going to play X all the time. But it might be time to like draft an X receiver in a Carnell Tate and then move Terry to a slot/Z role. But in this instance, I decided to go with, hey, I'm going to go with my receiver 2. Terry can play some X. Noah Brown, if he's back next year, he can play some X. We'll move Lemon around and T-Mac around between the Z and the slot, and we're going to get the most out of all these guys. And I know this defense is dog shit. I totally understand it's a very, very bad defense. They need edge. They need corner, but they also need receiver help. And at this point, I would like to go receiver here, and then we're not doing a second and third round, but that would be when I explore, hey, when can we find a corner? When can we find an edge? And if we're honest, those groups are very bad, and it's going to take free agent signing and draft capital into both those spots for them to turn that defense around. So decided to go receiver here, and when we get into mock drafts where we're going into the mid and later rounds, that's when we would address it there for the Commanders. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens, and this is where I'm going to have Carnell Tate come off the board. He is just like the big body X receiver that like DeAndre Hopkins is, but he's also up there in age, and how long is he going to be able to do that for you? And like Tez Walker's had a couple of like big plays this year, but Carnell Tate's just a better version of that, And this guy could be your X receiver. Zay Flowers moves into the slot full-time or Z full-time. And that also frees up Rashad Bateman. So, like, really, I would Tate's your X, Bateman's your Z, Flowers is in your slot. And you could flip Bateman and Flowers. But, like, that receiver trio plus, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, and so on and so forth. And Lamar Jackson, of course, pulling all the strings. Whoa, holy cow, that offense is insane. So, like, this is the big body X guy that I just don't think they have currently on the roster. So, slam dunk fit. But that being said, like, you could easily convince me there's a world where Tate goes 9, the Ravens aren't interested in another small receiver, and that puts Makai Lemon into the Cardinals' lap at 12. And, like, that's a scheme fit that I would really like as a compliment to Marvin Harrison Jr. So, you can fluctuate these guys, but I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Like, where are you at in Carnell Tate? I was not a big summer scouting fan of Carnell Tate, but he's a top 3 receiver for me. And, I mean, who knows? By the end of the year, maybe he does lap Lemon, and maybe he does surpass Jordyn Tyson. But I got 3 receivers going top 10, and that's not something I thought I was going to be saying 4 to 6 months ago, which that's kind of exciting development for this draft class. That doesn't have a whole lot of exciting developments, unfortunately. Let me get on to pick number 11 for the Los Angeles Rams, whether it's Rob Havenstein retiring or it's plugging him in at guard. CeCe Maui Noah, I think, brings this team a starter somewhere there on the right side of the offensive line. Sounds like it's going to be Havenstein's last year in Los Angeles, so I think you just plug Maui Noah right in there. He's got the play strength to fit into that gap scheme. The arms are a little short, and he kind of looks like a guard. So worst case scenario, he's going to be your right guard of the future, and he's going to be a fantastic scheme fit. So right guard, right tackle, Maui Noah, that's a future starter for years to come in Los Angeles. That takes us to the Arizona Cardinals, who I'm going to do the exact same thing with, just with Spencer Fano being the topic of conversation. Right tackle replacement for Jonah Williams, or Will Hernandez replacement at right guard. Either way you spin it, wherever you want Spencer Fano, I give you a huge upgrade at either one of those spots. And especially if they keep Drew Petzing, who, like, especially now with Jacoby Brissett running a pretty functional offense, I think we're starting to see that, like, the Petzing, he's still not the world's, like, most innovative, like, passing game. He's not Sean McVay, like, he's not drawing it up at that level, but he does such a great job scheming up that run game. And I think we're seeing now that the passing is not so bad. Maybe that's kind of a Kyler thing, but, like, his run game design, and then you throw in a Spencer Fano, holy cow, that would just be a home run fit for me, in my opinion, for Drew Petzing if he's back as the OC in Arizona. All right, to the Houston Texans at 13. And look, I mean, this is going to be a draft class where, like, and I mean, this could be the case depending on who you're listening to in a year, but, like, especially this year for me, there's just not 32 first-round guys. And I wonder if that pushes the value of some certain high-floor guys like Vega, Ioane, who I'm going to have go off the board here to Houston. I almost wonder if that pushes them into a territory that they wouldn't have been in just about any other class, right? Like Ioane in most other classes, I would be like, you know what, back in the first round, let's do it. He's rock solid. Or like top of the second round, like I'm trying to remember where the Rams got Steve Avila, but like that range, like that would be like ideal for Ioane. But it's just not that type of draft class. And I wonder if that just like pushes him up the board to a spot where it's like, man, the Texans really need a left guard upgrade. So let's just go get a brick wall, a pass protector, and a guy who's just moving dudes in gap scheme, has enough athleticism to do the zone stuff when we want to do it. Texans are primarily running gap more than zone anyway. So plug and play option there with Vega Ioane at left guard. And I just want to jump in front of this because it's like, okay, whoa, holy cow. We just had Maui Noah come off the board, then Fano, now Ioane. Holy cow. And we're going to have a couple more offensive linemen come off the board. And I wonder if it's just some guys with a higher floor are going to go in the first round, even if they don't have sexy potential. Or in this case with Vega, it's like instead of him going in the 20s, he may go 13 to a team that needs offensive line just because 32 guys got to go in the first round. And he's one of the safer bets if you can have a safe bet in the NFL draft. So I wonder if that just pushes him up the board that much more. To the Dallas Cowboys, and one of the worst defenses that I feel like I've ever put my eyes on. I'm going to go Jermod McCoy. Doesn't sound like he's going to play this year for Tennessee, but you go back to his, redshirt sophomore tape from a year ago. The guy's NFL ready, and he's still the best corner in this class. So as long as there's nothing glaring on the medicals that we find out that is a major red flag, he's going to probably be CB1. And boy, oh boy, Dallas needs a lot of defensive help. So I'm going to go corner, and then we're going to go edge later on. But I also think linebacker could be an interesting spot, depending on what they decide to do long-term with Logan Wilson and, the health of DeMarvion Overshown. Never forget, top 5 off-ball linebacker for me throughout that entire process. So big Overshown guy, hoping he comes back at 100%. To the Minnesota Vikings, going to be lazy again and go Jeremiah Love. He just brings so much more dynamism to that backfield that, Aaron Jones is kind of on the last legs of his career from what I see. And Jordan Mason, good power back and lower shoulder, but just not a very creative runner. I think Love brings way more dynamism. He could bring that home run potential. And also Notre Dame using him as a pass catcher I'd be really curious to see what KOC could use with his athleticism out in space. As Notre Dame's using him more in that type of area. So we love this. I get it. Corner, you don't necessarily need to draft a corner to start next year, but you could draft a guy a year ahead of when Byron Murphy has the opt out of his contract. So I did think about corner, but decided to go with Jeremiah Love again here to just add that much more firepower to that offense. Carolina Panthers here at 16. Another one where I hate to do it, but I'm gonna stay steady with it. For the most part, I think linebacker specifically in coverage for Carolina have been underwhelming. And I think the rest of that, honestly, Ejiro Evero's got that defense playing at a much higher level than I would have expected coming into the season. Nick Scorton's playing some great ball over the last 3 games. I think that's a big part of it too. And then JC Horn's playing like a guy you want to give a max contract to. But I do think the coverage component of that middle of the defense could definitely get a whole lot better. But Styles also brings like prototypical linebacker size. He's right around 240 pounds, sideline to sideline speed. So he's someone you can play all 3 downs. But I think specifically his coverage upside would be a big bolster to the middle of that defense, and especially defending running backs out of the backfield, tight ends, slot receivers, things like that. I think Styles brings a big boost to that linebacker room, and really a skill set I just don't think they have right now.
It is 32 beat writers season, August, when they can make you a lot of money, especially on a platform like FastDraft. Doesn't have hundreds of best ball bro killers. So when there's an injury and you hear about it through 32 beat writers, you can run to the FastDraft app and jump into a Flex 4 game. Just draft any 6 flex players. Top 4 enter your lineup every week. Or the Rabbit, 15-round best ball. Get your quarterback wide receiver stacks, get your running back sleepers. And if you follow 32 beat writers, you can jump into these draft rooms and be like, oh my God, I'm avoiding this guy at all costs, and I'm gobbling up all of this other running back before the larger public is fully aware, has fully digested the ramifications of the information that 32 beat writers is sharing. So go get FastDraft, type in that code 32BW. 32BW is the code. Get you a $50 deposit match on FastDraft. Now let's go start drafting faster.
Let's get on to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I kind of teased this last time, but then we ended up going edge. But, wouldn't it be fun if Kenyon Sadiq became a Kansas City Chiefs? His blocking ability would just honestly be a little bit unfair. This is another team I kind of thought, hey, maybe we have Jeremiah Love fall too. And, that's the Breece Hall type of ad that they didn't get to do because they wouldn't budge on the value of the trade deadline. But Sadiq, man, if this is Kelsey's last year, or even if it's not, if he's got one more year beyond this season that we're currently watching, Sadiq is tight end 2 for a year behind him. His blocking ability, that basically allows you to play Kelsey full-time in the slot. Sign me up for that. But also allowing him to, if you get a year of overlap of Kelsey and Kenyon, that could be huge for the route running component to Sadiq, because I think he can run routes, but there's nothing advanced, super nuanced to his game there. And I wonder if working with Kelsey could elevate that component of his game that much more, because I love the hands, love the blocking, very good athlete, love the yards after the catch. And dude, Andy Reid's the mastermind of screens. So giving an athlete like Kenyon Sadiq to an offensive mind like Andy Reid, who already uses tight end screens in a really creative way and effective way, that feels like a match made in heaven. And it feels like one of the best places that Sadiq could potentially go for his career. Pick number 18, I'm going to give the Chicago Bears Keldrick Falk. Tayo Odedingbo has been disappointing this year, and now he's hurt. So I think long-term, looking for an edge to complement Montez Sweat would go a long way. You get one of the younger players in this class, Keldrick Falk, could be 20 by the time he's drafted, has the power. We're seeing a little bit more nuance and finesse into his pass rush profile this year, while still being one of the best run defenders at the edge position this year. So I think he fits in with what Dennis Allen has historically liked in his edge rushers. I think he's a good complement for Montez Sweat, and really a good player for Sweat to teach, right? If there's anybody in the league that Falk could pick their brain as a similar player, I think Montez Sweat's a really good candidate for that. All right, Cleveland Browns here at 19. I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu. I mean, this guy has been rock solid. I got to give a shout out to Corey Kinnan. And I'm watching these guys pretty much week to week, but he has really been singing the praises of Lomu. So that kind of got me to go back and watch the last 3 games basically all in a row. And especially this last week. He's got it from a pass pro standpoint. I do think he still needs a little bit more mass, a little bit more power, specifically when it comes to driving guys off the line of scrimmage as a run blocker. But from a pass pro standpoint, man, the feet, the hands, they're there. So this is a Cleveland Browns offensive line that may be overhauling all 5 starters next year. And that's crazy to say, but you look at the guys, you look at the contracts, you look at the age, it may, and if they can't do all 5, they definitely need to do 3 of the 5, So going to be a big change to that offensive line. I think Caleb Lomu here at 19, that's a huge step in the right direction. And plus, we took Dante Moore at 6. You just made a quarterback investment in the top 6, so let's go invest that investment with a left tackle and a great pass protector in Caleb Lomu. Pittsburgh Steelers here at 20. I'm going to go Mansour Delane. Look, Darius Slay, he's on the last legs of his career. Like, every week, you basically can look up and be like, oh, the old slow guy getting burnt. And I mean, like, Jalen Ramsey, too, right? And now he's playing free safety. But, like, he got cooked by T. Higgins, when they played the Bengals just a few weeks ago, that on that play where T. Higgins slides down to the 5. Like, that's just Higgins beating with the line and then stacking them and then making the grab and then going down. Bengals win the game. So I think it's time to replace Darius Slay. And also the fact that we're like resorting to having like Jalen Ramsey move back to free safety kind of speaks to like where we are in general with our secondary. So I still think there's some work to be done. Mansour Delane, he's been the best corner in college football this year. And I think specifically like, look, the Steelers have been playing more zone and like they played more quarters this year than they have in the last few years. But at the end of the day, like Mike Tomlin wants to run man coverage in crunch time. And I think Mansour Delane, Joey Porter Jr., that's a cornerback tandem that you can do that with. So I like this long-term for the Pittsburgh Steelers. To the Detroit Lions. Corner is still a big concern for me. So I'm going to go Avion Terrell. He has not been the biggest of issues for Clemson. That coverage unit as a whole has been a little bit disappointing, but I think Terrell's holding his own. And Lions, another one of these teams that's running more zone coverage this year than they have in the last 3 years. So especially with Aaron Glenn now, not the DC there. I think they still want to run man coverage in crunch time, but they are sprinkling in more zone coverage. Right now, it's a lot of cover 1 and cover 3. So Terrell, not the biggest guy, and you already have a slot guy in Brian Branch. You could also play him at safety and move Terrell into the nickel if you really felt like you need to. But, Arnold, Ray Sherrod, we're still kind of waiting to see it with a lot of these corners on the younger side in Detroit. So I think another swing of the bat there. And again, I talked about this last time when I mocked Terrell to the Lions, but like this guy's a tenacious tackler. Like this guy is, forgive me for doing this, but like, lack of better phrasing, he's a kneecap biter. Like I think he really does fit in with like the football toughness that Dan Campbell's looking to bring into that locker room. So I like that fit from a culture and an on-field standpoint. To the Los Angeles Chargers. And here we go. Like this is another one of these situations where like, would he go in the first round most years? No, but he definitely needs to be higher than player 228 on PFF's board. But Ipani Lalolu, I believe is how you say that. Center from Oregon, and he's kind of, and he might play guard at the next level, to be honest with you, because he's a big guy. And I can see a world where like left guard is fine here for the Chargers. And either way you spin it, like left guard, center, like they need to figure out a little bit of something that's going on there on that interior. That's been an interior offensive line that's been disappointing. But Lalolu, I would just play him at center and replace Bradley Bozeman. To me, he's been the weakest link of that interior trio. So I would just, Lalolu, you're going to go play center. He's a big mauling guy who can do the gap stuff that Greg Roman's going to want to call. And he's also a good enough athlete to be able to do some of the zone stuff. Now, I wouldn't say like plug him into San Francisco and let's go run wide zone all day. Not that type of athlete, but like good enough athlete to run some zone and mix it up there. So I think this is your center upgrade that the Chargers are looking for. Last mock, I had Connor Liu in the spot, but Liu, torn ACL, 20-year-old guy. He's going to probably, a 21-year-old guy. He's going to almost certainly go back to school. I'd be shocked if he declares, to be honest. So in that instance, another one of these guys gets taken on this class. It's a good center class, but in a group where 32 guys got to go first round, I wonder if Lalolu gets the bump here. It's like, hey, we can plug and play this guy right away at center, and someone's got to go in the first round. So let's go with Lalolu there. And then we get to the San Francisco 49ers, as previously mentioned. Probably wouldn't be the best fit for Lalolu, but I'm going to go to the edge group here. And I know they put in an offer for Jermaine Johnson, and I know Nick Bosa will be back next year, and I know Michael Williams will be back next year. But even just like the infrastructure of having Michael and Nick Bosa, I think gives San Francisco the chance to take a shot on someone like a David Bailey, who, look, he just might not be a very good run defender at the next level. It is what it is. And Michael Williams at the next level, or at the current level he's at, might only be a good run defender. So you might already have a built-in rotation there with Michael Williams and David Bailey. But also, this is Robert Saleh calling the defense, right? Like he wants to have as many pass rushers on the field as possible in passing situations. So Michael Williams has already folded inside when he was healthy for the 49ers. Like he already had experience doing that for the 49ers in passing situations this year. So I think in that instance, like Bosa and Bailey become your outside rushers. And dude, Saleh wants these guys to get wide at tackles. He wants a wide 9 if you've ever seen it. So like David Bailey's speed, inside counters, specifically the spin move from that wide 9 alignment that Saleh wants these guys at, with Michael Williams then rushing from the inside, and then like Alfred Collins, CJ West, like one of those two guys is the other rusher. This is Saleh's dream right here. So whether it's Cassius Saleh, David Bailey, I think they would be a great value there for 23, and I think those would be guys and additions to that D-line that Saleh would be pounding the table for. And I know they went heavy on the D-line last year's draft, but I mean, still need some more. Still need more. Dallas Cowboys here at 24. To that same point, I'm going to go Cassius Howell. And I also wanted to say I'm recording this and we're putting this out on the day of Marshawn Nealon passing away. Pretty much confirmed that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I don't want to say the other word and get us demonetized, but if you or anybody you know is struggling, and if you don't have somebody in your immediate circle you can reach out to, family, friends, coworkers, whatever the case may be, please do call or text 988. That is the national support hotline for mental health and suicidal thoughts, and I think mental crisis is like technically the name of the hotline. But I did a documentary back in college about mental health in sports, and stuff like this really beats me up. My grandmother passed away from not a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but a self-inflicted, cause of death. So definitely a cause near and dear to my heart. So if you or anybody is struggling, please do seek out help. Reach out to me, and if I can see it and I can respond in time, I absolutely will. But rest in peace, Marshawn Nealon. Really, really sucks to get that news. But anyways, as hard as it is to segue from that, obviously Marshawn Nealon no longer in the picture. Donovan Ezra is a great pass rusher. Howell doesn't have great arm length. So yeah, is it two stubby guys? Sure, the two guys that aren't great run defenders, but honestly, at this point, this team needs all the pass rush juice it can find. So got a little bit of extra juice there with Howell. He's also got enough sand in the pants where maybe he can overcome the arm length concerns. So the explosiveness of Howell paired up with Ezra, that gives you a really nice pass rush tandem. Then we're just trying to figure out the run defense side of it. And maybe that means TJ Parker would be their preference here, but honestly, Howell's just been more impressive this year for me than TJ Parker, even with, I know the run defense concerns are there for Howell. At this point, I'd rather have Howell on my team than Parker. Get on to the Buffalo Bills here at 25. I've been going linebacker a lot in mock drafts, but this time I'm going to go with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. And I also like Kamari Ramsey. I like Dylan Thieneman. I like a lot of safeties. It was a key Wheatley. I'm like a perennial Penn State safety lover. But Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is he's a really fun player. He'd be a really good like where I think this team, again, like linebacker, safety, two spots I think they need to get better at. McNeil-Warren specifically as a box defender could almost kind of alleviate some of the concerns I have for both spots. And I know Cole Bishop's coming off a really good game. So I think like Bishop is your over-the-top free safety type, and then McNeil-Warren would be the guy that rotates in. But I also think both can coexist in those split safety looks that they run a lot of in Buffalo. So range, size, he's got the peanut punch down. McNeil-Warren is a tight end eraser, is definitely an option. Playing inside the box is that robber in cover three, I think a lot of coverage upside here. But Bills fans, I'd love to know, because there was really kind of three position groups I thought about going with here. Linebacker, I've been doing a lot of CJ Allen here. So let me know if that's what you want to see more of, or if you think that's the right fit for the Bills. Not really if you want to see more of it. Let's think of what the Bills are going to do. Safety, and this time I went to Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. He could be that non-P4 guy that goes in the first round. Or honestly, nose tackle, Ed Oliver out for the rest of the year. And I know Deon Walker's been really good this year, but Caden McDonald, Amori Washington, does that interest you at all? Getting that big body, athletic nose tackle in the mix. I'd be curious to hear from Bills fans. All right, to the Seattle Seahawks at 26. Going to repeat this one from last time. Dude, Keith Abney is an absolute animal. He's a dog. He's a guy I want on my football team. And if I'm saying that, I have a really strong feeling that Mike McDonald's saying the same thing. Now, it may not be in the first round. I think of him as a first-round guy. I've seen him go in the first-round mocks too. So, but he doesn't go in the first round in every mock. So a lot to be figured out. But to me, he's a dog of a corner. Love him as a man-press guy. This team has been looking for an excuse to not play Tariq Woolen, even though I know he did play pretty well against the Commanders, but that was a game that was going downhill quick for Washington. So I felt like that was just an added, side effect, maybe if you want to call it that. But I think Keith Abney, that guy's an outside corner. And even if Woolen's there, this could be an upgrade over Josh Jobe, who I know is hurt right now. But adding Abney to that secondary, bolstering those outside corners where then you can really focus on Devon Witherspoon as a nickel playmaker. Yes, fully and totally sign me up. And I say that Witherspoon is a dynamic nickel playmaker, but you also got Nick Eman-Wari. So really, I might be talking about something where it's Eman-Wari is your dynamic kind of Hamilton type for Mike McDonald, and it's Abney and Witherspoon on the outside. And if that's the case, those are two absolute dogs. And sign me up for all of that. I would love to see that, actually. And I'm not even a Seattle fan, but that gets me pumped up just thinking about it. Now we get to the Los Angeles Rams. We've already gone offensive line. Otherwise, I had a guy in mind who could be a really interesting kind of fit for them. But instead, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and keep this guy in state. I'm going to go with Chris Johnson. 27 is as high as I've had him go in these mocks. And again, might be a little bit more of a top of second round guy, but I've really loved his tape at San Diego State. I think he's got to check the boxes from an athletic standpoint. Man, zone coverage. He's got prototypical size. I think this is a guy that kind of goes to the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, something like that. And then that's his opportunity to showcase, hey, I could do this at a P4 level. And as long as he checks the box there, I'm fully anticipating him being like winner of the Senior Bowl. And then you see him in like every first round mock throughout the rest of the cycle, very similar to what happened with Quinyon Mitchell. So I don't know if Johnson's quite the prospect of Quinyon Mitchell, one of my top corners in that class, but I can see a very similar path to the draft for Chris Johnson. All right, then we get to the Denver Broncos. And, I had a couple of different minds or a couple of different guys in mind. I thought about Austin Serveld here to be like a left guard option for this team. Decided I'm going to just in like Trevor Gooseby could be a really fun fit, but and especially if you're comfortable playing him at like right tackle, because that's basically what I'm going to do here with Blake Miller. I do wonder if there's a world where they move on from Mike McGlinchey. That contract's a very steep one. It's just a lot of money in general throughout the rest of that roster that you're having to spill out. So I could see where Mike McGlinchey becomes a cap casualty because of that. And Blake Miller does a lot of the things that McGlinchey does well. So I feel like there's a really seamless plug-and-play option. Also a guy who's got a ton of starting experience under his belt at Clemson. Preseason offensive tackles 6 or 7, I believe 7 coming this season. And really it was just like play strength as my concern. Feels like he's bulked up a little bit. He's sustaining blocks a little bit better. I think that could still be an area where he could stand to get a little bit better. And I think in pass pro, like the strength it's not elite, but I think it's gotten to the point where it's like functional. But him on the move is fantastic. And I felt like that was a big part of why the 49ers like Mike McGlinchey. I think that's a big part of what initially drew Denver and Sean Payton to, Mike McGlinchey. So I almost wonder if Blake Miller and his movement skills, specifically getting out and block out in front of, RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, those types of guys, wonder if this could be a guy that like they see as like a seamless replacement for Mike McGlinchey. Let's get on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 29. Didn't have C.J. Allen go to the Bills, so that left him available here to be your Savasier Dennis replacement, upgrade, all of the above. And Levante David can't play forever, so off-ball linebacker, eventually you've got to address it if you're Tampa Bay. And if you can just have a single year of overlap with Levante David and C.J. Allen, I think that would be perfect. Like, I'd love to have more than a year of it, but like that's the mentor-mentee relationship I'm looking for here. Allen's a little bit of a weak spot in coverage, and that's where Savasier Dennis has also had some major concerns. So maybe in a perfect world, the Bucs are hoping it's Sonny Styles who falls here, who brings a little bit more of that coverage skill set. But I do think Allen's getting a little bit better there, and he's still one of the younger prospects in this class too. So with some more time, some more PT, I do think that coverage field will develop. And again, if you get to work with Levante David, that would be a great guy to help, bring you along in that respect. New England Patriots. This would have been another really interesting Blake Miller spot, right? Like Morgan Moses replacement. So maybe I should have gone Serveld for the Broncos and then Blake Miller here, but maybe we'll save that for our next time. Blake Miller would have been a really good actually fit here for the New England Patriots. But instead, I'm going to go with Denzel Boston. Just tore up Illinois a couple weeks ago, and I know Illinois minus Xavier Scott is not really the Illinois we thought we were getting coming into the season. But, I just wonder if you take those Mac Hollins snaps and just gave it to a younger, better, faster, more athletic, cheaper version of that, what that might look like. I know the last Washington receiver didn't work out for New England Patriots, but please don't helmet scout. Denzel Boston couldn't be any further of a prospect really from Jalen Polk. But they, so I think this is your X receiver, put him on the line of scrimmage. And I know Kayshon Boutte has done some of that this year, but like, let's be honest, like Boutte should not be lining up on the line of scrimmage. He can do it, but like Boston's definitely the better candidate for that. So I think this is your X line of scrimmage, man press, red zone threat. And then I think that makes everyone else just look that much better. And also like Diggs has had some good games this year, but also just looking at that receiver room as a whole, like how long is he going to be there in New England? So they might be looking to replace bodies in and of itself. So adding Denzel Boston in the mix to me makes a lot of sense. I thought about Casey Concepcion, but even, let's say Diggs isn't there between, Kyle Williams, some of the other receivers they currently have, like Boutte and Pop Douglas. I was like, I don't know if we need Concepcion, but he's a really good player and should be considered as a potential first round guy. Maybe even by this team here in the Philadelphia Eagles. Instead, this is where I'm going to have TJ Parker come off the board. And it's going to be curious to see like what Philadelphia does with Jalen Phillips. Do they sign him? Do they let him walk and get the comp third? Either way, it's kind of a win-win. I have a feeling they'll want to sign him, but like, let's be honest, especially when you watch this season, this edge group for Philadelphia, they just had Brandon Graham come out of retirement and they felt the need to go make a trade for Jalen Phillips. So even if they sign Phillips, I think you're seeing the signals go off in Howie Roseman and Vic Fangio's, head being like, we still don't have enough. We just don't have enough guys. So even if they extend Jalen Phillips, I don't think that takes them out of the edge market. And TJ Parker he has not had the season I was hoping that he would have, but he does do one thing really, really well. And that's be a power rusher. Bull rush and speed to power. That's what he's going to bring to the table. He doesn't have much bend, not much hip and ankle flexion there. They get off fine, but it's power and getting to your chest with speed to power. What does Brandon Graham do? What does Brandon Graham made a career out of? Being a power rusher and setting a hard edge and playing the run. I give you TJ Parker as your seamless baton handoff from Brandon Graham to TJ Parker. To me, it's a perfect fit. And then we look at the New York Jets with the Indianapolis Colts pick. Very, very fun with that trade. And this is, kind of my, trade recap show. So like, while we're talking about the Jets, man, like Quinnen Williams going to Dallas. It's interesting that Dallas thinks that they're in a spot to be making trades and competing, but nevertheless, they didn't have to give up a pick this year, and they get an absolute upgrade at that position. So like Quinnen Williams, he's going to bring that run defense that he's still doing that at a high level with the Jets. TBD on what he can be, because he's had moments of being an awesome pass rusher. Can Dallas unlock that as a more full-time thing? But minimum, his run defense is like what this team needs in the middle. So love that. And then when you throw in like what they gave or got out of the Micah Parsons trade, what they ended up giving up, like I'd rather have Micah Parsons, but like all in all, I think like they've handled the situation fairly well, considering they could have had Micah Parsons all along. But anyways, I digress. Quinnen Williams was a really interesting ad and didn't see that coming. And then in this instance, we're talking about the Colts pick no longer being the Colts pick because they gave up 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner. Look, I love me some Sauce Gardner and AD Mitchell, I should say. As a dynasty owner, I'm very interested to see where this goes. Sauce Gardner's awesome. He's a top 3 to 5 corner in the league, comfortably. I'd probably still put him at 3, right behind Pat Surtain and Derek Stingley Jr. But 3 or 5. He's a great player. I'm not giving up 2 firsts for him. I think Indianapolis honestly overpaid. And from what it sounded like, it didn't sound like Darren Muji was trying to trade Sauce Gardner. It's just the Colts weren't taking no for an answer and just kept upping the offer. Which if they're going to do that and give you 2 firsts and an interesting receiver who maybe could be your receiver 2 the rest of the year, and maybe he sticks to the roster and is that next year. Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't you? I think it's an absolute no-brainer at that point for the Jets. So like the Jets, if I were grading it, that's an A move. Because like you're not winning with them, so what are you holding on to them for? Could have been a piece in 2 years' time where maybe you are competing, but 2 first-round picks might also be 2 pieces that are competing in your roster in 2 years when you're a contender. So don't follow that whatsoever. It does feel like a bit of an overpay for the Colts, but I can understand where Chris Ballard's coming from. He is this guy who's been on this kind of hot seat the last 2 years, and now his team looks like they could go make a run to the AFC Championship game. And what's the weakest spot on that roster? What have I been mocking the Indianapolis Colts in these mocks? Cornerback. So why not go get a top 3 to 5 corner in the NFL? Even if it does cost you 2 1s and AD Mitchell, you're hoping that those are going to be late first-round picks, maybe pick 32 this year, right? So I definitely think the Jets won that trade, but it is really interesting, and only time will tell how, just like the Von Miller trade a couple of years ago for the Rams, if the Rams were bounced in the first round of the playoffs, that would have been looked at as like an L of a move, like a major, massive L. They gave up a 2nd and 3rd for Von just to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. That's such an L. But they won the Super Bowl, so nobody talks about that as an L. That's a win. I look back at that trade as a win because they gave up 2 top 100 picks, yes, but Von Miller is the reason they won the Super Bowl, and that's what we're playing for, right? So really only time will tell how this trade grades out for the Colts. Because they won the Super Bowl this year, which I'm not expecting, but let's just say they do. Well, then yeah, absolutely it's worth 2 first-round picks to go get Sauce Gardner, and he's going to be a part of your team for the next 4 or 5, however many years. But if they get bounced the first round, you still get Sauce for the next 4 or 5, however many foreseeable years. But he didn't make that run that happened this year. So that's where it might come down and kind of hurt you here. So for the Jets, this would have been a great CJ Allen spot. Would have loved that. Corner, safety are all interesting here. But I'm going to dip my toes back in the receiver field. And Chris Brazzell, this team needs some more size. Elijah Surratt could be a really interesting fit. You could also wait and go Jeremy Bernard and pair him up with Ty Simpson. That could be kind of fun. Wouldn't do that here. But I'm going to go Chris Bell and bring some more athleticism. And Garrett Wilson's a good athlete. Don't take that as what I'm saying here, but they just need more dynamism on the outside beyond Garrett Wilson. And Chris Burrell absolutely brings that to the table. And the route running still a work in progress, but he gets to work with, in this instance, one of the best, most refined route runners in the game in Garrett Wilson. So great mentor-mentee relationship there. But also you would ask Bell to do different things. He would become your yards after the catch, explosive guy, vertical, deep threat, try to stack some DBs, get some big plays that way, as he continues to grow and have the route running come along. So I like the fit. In a perfect world, you'd be getting him in somewhere in the 2nd round. But again, 32 guys going to go in the 1st round. So if they like him there at 32, I think you pull the trigger on him. And really, it's this is the team that drafted Malachi Corley in the 3rd round. So why wouldn't you love Chris Bell, even if you had to take him at 32? He's going to bring all that yards after the catch ability with a bigger frame, 227 pounds, and honestly, he's a better athlete. As good of an athlete Corley is, I would rather have the overall athletic package of Chris Bell over Malachi Corley. So, and more functional receiving ability, wide receiver skill sets. So, absolutely love that fit there. I'm going to go ahead and scroll through so you guys can see all these picks one more time. But that is my post-trade deadline NFL mock draft. Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section on YouTube. I'm trying to respond to as many of the comments from last mock draft, but as well as this mock draft as I possibly can with the time that I have. This is actually my birthday weekend, so I might be a little late to getting to them, but please do leave those comments. I'm going to try to respond to them as soon as I possibly can. Or if you're watching on X, feel free to reply back to this post, or you can slide in my DMs at TJ Wengert, spelled Wengert. Love to hear your thoughts. Who went too high? Who went too low? Who's your squad? What do you think of the picks that I gave your team? Or if you just want to talk NFL trades, like I'd love to know who you thought the biggest winner of the trade deadline, who the biggest loser was, or individual trades. Was one side a bigger winner than the other? Let me hear those thoughts down below in the comment section. That is going to do it for this episode of Beyond the Tape. Again, thank you to FastDraft for sponsoring today's video. Use code 32BW. Get that deposit match. Take advantage of this promo offer. And until next time, we are signing off.